It may not entirely feel like it just at the moment, but the rules are losing their grip, their place. And there is much more scope opening up for us to play and extend ourselves through play. And as we come to the end of 2020, which has been a challenging year, we are really being asked through the energies that are coming in to find our ability to creatively resource our next steps and our future. And the 2021 is going to bring with it a predominant energy of play, which I think we could all do with, and it's going to be very welcome. But it, for those of us who are working in business, it's going to be a bit of a challenge at the same time to make that shift. We think about play. Play is how we extend ourselves. Play is how we find out what we're capable of. And we have a very different perspective about risk when we are in the mode of play, because we do things to see if they will work. We don't hesitate about it. We just go for it. So when I think about that finding that joy in the experience, that present moment sort of awareness, we see that in children. You know, they can be totally focused on that. We can also see it in animals. I often think about there's a video of a deer playing in the waves and running in and out of the waves, or I've seen videos of goats sliding down concrete, the concrete bits in the middle of the steps so that they're turning into a slide, or a dog that grabs a sled and runs it up the hill and jumps on it and goes down. You know, those sorts of things. There's moments of just doing it and not having any sort of like restraints to what you are going to try out and work with. And that really is the energy that we want to be moving into. Now, business itself is serious on the whole. It's, the stakes are high, and you know, we tend to think our way through things and balance things up and weigh things out. And so when it comes to trying to integrate play into our day-to-day lives and to experiment, it's actually really quite hard. And yet that's what we really need to be building in to what we're going to be doing over the next year, and setting the stage for much further than that. So we need to be working out how to creatively resource ourselves in business through play. And that's the key of what I want to talk about in this video, is give you some steps that you can work through to identify how you can build more play and experimentation into your business so that you are embracing the energies that are coming in. Now, the first thing that we need to be able to do in order to embrace that playful aspect of ourselves and our businesses, and bring out our inner child into our business to have a bit of fun, is to catch those beliefs that keep coming at us that say that won't work, or well, there's no way that that would be possible or acceptable, or I can't do that because I really should be doing something else. And the I shoulds and ought tos are very, very powerful in our programming with our business. And it takes a lot of work to take those out. So the very first step that we can take is to identify where those beliefs and thoughts come into play, which say that won't work, that can't work, that's not going to be possible. And when we find those, it's our opportunity to just catch them and reframe them. And why not is a very good question to ask yourself. What if? A good questions to start asking yourself, well, what if it could work? Or how can I make it work? Or what could I do to make this possible? To actually reframe those thoughts as they come up, and they will come up. They will come up for all of us because they're part of how we've been effectively coached to think about business, because business, as I said, is serious, and it's, you know, the stakes are high, and you know that we can't take any risks with it. And yet we never expand and we never extend and we never find our full potential unless we actually play, because it is in play that we really find that true extent of our what we do. And when we play and we try something and it works, well, then it becomes a new skill. It becomes a new strength that we have. And if we fail, then we know we know how to adjust ourselves. So being able to be very agile with our thinking and saying, well, what if it could, or how can I make it work, is the first step that is really going to help to solidify and embody a way of thinking about problems that is going to be supported, is going to support you to creatively resource your next step. So the next thing that we want to be looking at is around mistakes. Now, and mistakes and risk, really. So you're going to have a particular narrative around making mistakes and taking risks. And that narrative may well put barriers up for you trying stuff out. Just trying things on, because you may have a narrative on risk that says, I can't, that the stakes are too high for me to do that. Or you may feel about mistakes that the cost is too much to you to make a mistake. So there's an opportunity here for you to lean into what that narrative is, how it shows up, how it impacts on your behavior, and then how you can flip the script, basically, so that you are looking at mistakes as opportunities to learn. So instead, and mistakes is a really heavy word, and it's probably laden with all sorts of energetic attachments around, your value and your worth, if you dig deep enough. So it's actually quite a laden word. So when you try something and it doesn't work as you might have hoped it would, then perhaps it's an opportunity to learn what the mechanics of what works and what doesn't. So it's about rewriting that narrative that goes on in your head about the consequences of mistakes. And the same is true with taking risks. We are naturally risk averse, obviously we are, because it's about protecting ourselves. But what is a risk, and why do we perceive something to be a risk? Because in business, actually, very little is that risky. I mean, we're not jumping off a cliff without a parachute for the most part. Those are the sorts of risks that we are wired to think very carefully about. But the risks that, of testing something out and trying a different approach, well, where does the narrative and the story that that's a risk come from? And there are some very deeply held societal beliefs around risk that we have the opportunity to rewrite, and you have the opportunity to rewrite. And again, by rewriting that story that you might be holding about risk and mistake, then you actually open up your potential to move in different directions and in different ways, and to sort of accept that the rules aren't actually real, they're more of an illusion, and you have the ability to completely ignore them if you want, or do things upside down or back to front. There's nothing to stop you doing that, and there isn't really the risk that you might perceive with that. Just because everybody else does it a particular way doesn't mean you have to. So we've got some real work to do there. So those first two steps around the beliefs that actually stop us from trying anything new, and also then our narratives around mistake and risk, which will actually put a block on us really letting ourselves loose with some play and experimentation. Now, if you asked virtually any entrepreneur why they set up their own business, the answer that they would give would include freedom, the ability to be flexible, the freedom to do this, the freedom to do that. We have a lot of perceptions about the freedom that we can give ourselves. And that's really important aspect of having your own business, because the freedom to make those choices and to determine your particular path is a key aspect of your ability to be creatively expressing your purpose. So that's really important, but it's worth taking some time to think about what freedoms have you granted yourself through your business, and what freedoms have you denied yourself through your business? Because we do still carry some of these beliefs about how our businesses should be structured that deny us the freedoms that we would actually like, or we structure our businesses in such a way that we don't really have the freedom that we would like to have. So we might actually structure a business so that we are doing more and more client work than actually is ideal for us on an energetic and practical level. And it is denying us of freedom. Or you might think that you have to start at 9 o'clock and finish at 5 o'clock, or you getting into those structures. You may have overly structured your business, which is denying you some freedoms. You may not see how you can loosen that, the grip of that. And that's a really important part of the process of creatively resourcing yourself, because you need to be able to see what freedoms you have and what freedoms you have denied yourself. So the question for you around freedom is to say, well, what freedoms could you grant yourself? And particularly focus on those that you consider to be completely impracticable or out of reach of you. What freedoms could you grant yourself? And it might be that you want to grant yourself the freedom to have a 3-day week for the sake of argument. And you've actually not allowed yourself to do that because you've got that thing going on in your head that says you've always got to be doing, and you can't actually take some time off. Or you can't, if you're not doing, you're not creating what you should be creating, but also you're possibly being judged by other people in your life because you aren't constantly busy. So there's lots of things that we might need to reframe around those freedoms that actually set the stage for us to be able to creatively resource our lives and our businesses. So that's the next step for you to do, is really think about what freedoms have you granted yourself, what freedoms have you denied yourself, and what freedoms could you give yourself. And for me, there is one more piece to the puzzle of getting ourselves ready to creatively resource. And that is to come into an acceptance of the fact that the mind only knows what the mind knows. There is a limit to what we know is what we know when we're working mentally and using our intellect to drive our business or to create the structures and the systems and the actions that we want to deliver our businesses. Then the mind is limited to what it already knows. And unless you're completely open to learning and inspiration coming in, then that ability to think outside the box isn't there. So we need to be completely accepting the fact that we only know what we know, and we are in a constant state of unconscious incompetence because we do not know what we don't know. But we can learn what we don't know and what we need by listening to that deeper part of ourselves that is open to inspiration and that is responding to what's going on around us and seeing the opportunities that has that isn't in here. So we sort of don't need to think outside the box. We need to get out of the box altogether. And to get out of the box is to actually start to really listen to the inspiration and the other clues and nudges and prompts that we always get on a day-to-day basis. It's just a question of whether or not we're really open to them and we're really looking for them and prepared to respond to them. So for me, those are the stages that we need to go through and we need to be aware of in our own behavior and our development and the way we respond on a day-to-day basis and how we feel about our businesses and how we operate, in order to open us up to be able to creatively resource our business and to bring play and cultivate an atmosphere and a culture of play in our businesses, that means that we are constantly looking to how we can take ourselves forward without actually having a predefined path, because that's the most limiting thing. Is when you say, it's like having the 5-year plan, you know, saying, right, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. Never mind what is going on around me. This is my plan and I am not deviating from it. Well, that's, you know, we're living in a time and in a world which is just too fast moving. And if we are not agile, if we're not dynamically responding to situations and opportunities and our own changing energy and beliefs and, you know, just how conscious and aware we are of what we're doing and what's going on around us in our relationships, if we're not responding on that level and able to adapt and flex, then, you know, then our path well, it runs the risk of becoming irrelevant, but also it runs the risk of you burning out to deliver it, because if you've got to push when everything, and just really focus and push on going down this particular path that you've predetermined, when everything else is pulling against you, it's exhausting. Whereas if you can learn to move with the changes, then it becomes easier, and you have this this culture that you have cultivated in your business of learning to flex and adapt, which is really positive. So we now need to say, okay, that's all in place, and it's when I say it's in place, I mean it's an ongoing piece of work that we're doing on ourselves, and an ongoing culture change that we're navigating. But once that's in place, then it does start to open up the potential to bring in creative resourcing into our businesses, and that's what we're after. Now, for me, the easiest way to bring creative resourcing into your business is to use the blank sheet approach. And the blank sheet mentality is something I really nurtured in myself and encourage in my clients, because when you work from the basis of creating what is needed rather than what already exists, the potential and the creativity that needs to automatically comes into play, is much greater. And that's because when we're working off what already in place, well, that has a specific energy and a specific imprinting of that energy. And when you try to then innovate using that structure, then what you end up is trying to bolt on a new energy to an old energy. And generally speaking, the fittings are not compatible and you don't get this smooth process. Whereas if you start with a blank sheet and with no reference to what already exists and just focus on what is needed, then you have a much greater degree of flexibility. And I've certainly experienced this myself when I've spoken about this in the past as like when I have used language that relates to something that I don't actually necessarily implement in my business, but I've used language as a shortcut. And then when I've come to try and think about it and work with it and create what was needed, because I was using a specific language, it was actually blocking the complete freedom to create what was needed. And when you work with a piece of blank paper effectively, then the rules don't apply. So you're not actually limited by the rules, and you're not sort of like herded into and down particular paths which you wouldn't otherwise have gone down, but they are there because of the energetic imprinting of the structure or the words or whatever it might be. And I say this as well about copy. It's much easier to write from scratch than it is to rewrite something that already exists if you're looking to completely re-energize or shift the frequency of what it is that you're writing, for precisely this reason. So in our businesses, the structures and the models that we've created can be a real block and weight that actually prevents us really getting out of the box and coming at things completely differently. So what you can do is a very simple exercise, is to identify something, a project that you want to get going with, a project that you've stalled with perhaps, or something that you want to create and bring to life. And really center yourself. Just focus on your breathing for a minute, close your eyes, focus on your breathing, and really think about, what does the energy of that project feel like now? And just let yourself objectively explore that energy, and you'll probably start to notice how it's actually, if it's something that you've been wanting to do for a while, that it's actually, yeah, that's where that discomfort is not very comfortable, and that's why I want to change it. And you'll start to sort of notice that, how that energy is actually playing out in your field. Just give yourself 5 minutes maybe, just to really sit with the energy of where that project is now. And then let yourself just like move that to one side, and then connect to the energy of what it wants to be. And that will come in, will have just a different feel to it. And then you again, sit with that for 5 minutes and stuff. And then you've got the opportunity to compare and contrast and say, okay, that's a very different feel. This is something I have done for myself with a project at home. And the next step that we asked for is to actually ask for the first step into moving it from the energy it's in now to the energy it wants to be in. What is the first step that we need to take? And that first step is often not what you think it will be. Now, I have a particular project at home of like revamping. We've been moving things around, moving rooms around, and I've got one room which is just like, and I can't, it's sort of like, and I had it in my head that I had to do things in a very specific order in order to move that project forward. And that in itself was actually stopping it moving forward to great frustration. So when I connected to the energy of it, where it's at, it's like it's really niggling at me. It's really physically uncomfortable, whereas it's going to be flipping fantastic, and it's going to feel really good. But the first step was not the first step that I thought it was. And once I took that first step, it started to move. So that's really the question for you. It's like, okay, where is it now? Where does it want to be? And what is the first step? And the thing here is to really trust yourself in terms of what that first step, when that first step comes to you, because it may not make sense to you, is to actually trust that that is the first step. And when I think you can feel that, then it makes it easier to move forward from a very creative space. And of course, once you have the first step, then you have the ability to work out the next step, and the step after that, and the step after that. And you can, from that place, it depends on what you need personally, you can actually then create yourself as like a 5-10 step program process to actually implement it, or you can give yourself 1 or 2 steps ahead in order to be able to dynamically shift and adapt as things go. Because again, the ability to change your path if need be, or to change the tempo that you're taking, or whatever it is that because there are many ways that you could actually adapt that. The ability to do that is key to being able to creatively resource. But the blank sheet approach that allows you to really connect in to what needs to happen and tap into that deeper part of you that really knows the answer, because your mind, of course, is limited to what it knows and what makes sense and what's logical and all the rest of it. And yet we have this access to this much greater part of ourselves that we can use and bring into play, in our, pun intended, into our businesses in order to open us up to a much broader range of possibility, to pull us into, actively pull us into our full potential. Because we, as I said, if we only know what we know, then we aren't aware of what our full potential is ever, because we can't mentally construct our full potential because it is beyond what we know. So in order to truly be what we are capable of, we need to believe that there is stuff, there is a reality, there is a belief, there is a way of being that is beyond what we know. And therefore we have to be completely open to finding that. And that's why play is so important, because play is what creates that. If you think about any child or any young animal, they play incessantly in order to find out what they're capable of. And that's what we need to be bringing into business in order to change the business paradigm, because that's really what this is about. This is about saying business is has been working off a particular platform, a particular way of being that is completely out. I mean, it is completely now out of tune with where we're going. So we need to be creating the new, and we can only create the new if we move the old to one side and really give ourselves permission to try things on for size and use the phrase, what if? And why not? And really give ourselves the permission and the freedom to take this forward.